we've dealt so far of the 3 main requirements I mentioned for business success. The mental set was the first one, as you recall. We've now done quite a bit of work on the mental set. We have not solved every single comedy we have on every single wall here. But I'm wondering how many of you, even though you may not have resolved it yet, have, out of all of this, have picked out some really core issues that are tappable? Okay. See, that was the whole purpose of it. That was the whole purpose, to loosen some of those things up. I hope you made a list of those. And maybe you guys want to get together and start, doing it with each other. Because you've got to get the mental set proper, or what's going to happen next, which is going to be some of the, well, I'm going to do one more thing on the mental set, but after that we're going to do technical how-tos, etc. Actually, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to talk a little bit about dreams first, but I'm not going to have the exercise I was going to have just in the interest of time, because there's other things I want to make sure I cover. One of the things that is, in my experience at least, that is essential if you're going to go to some new level in your business world, is that you have to think it first. You have to dream it first. It has to be in your thoughts first. Now, if you'll think about it, everything around you of a tangible, financial, material nature was thought, in somebody's thought first. The chair you're sitting in, somebody had to think about that before it was ever made. The pencil you're writing with, the same thing. The name tag you're wearing, the same thing. This workshop, which is not a tangible material thing, but it is a thing, had to be thought of first before it ever happened. It has to happen here first. And so if you want to go to a new level in your financial area, it isn't just, oh, gee, I'd like to, therefore there's the thought. That's not good enough, typically. It must be dreamed. It must take tangible form. You must create it in your mind first about what it would be once you got there. That's very important, because that's the pull that will pull you into it, okay? And you need to have that. And what most of us, unfortunately, have lost as we've matured from childhood into adulthood is the ability, no, I shouldn't say that, is the facility to dream. We have the ability. We can dream all we want. But we start to dream about what it would be like if we were making $1 million a year, or whatever level you want, if we had this big organization that was helping the indigent, for example, or if we had this and if we had that. These may be just idle thoughts out there, but until they become dreams, and until they become something tangible in your thought system, they remain just out of fingertips reach someplace. So we need to dream it. Now, I don't know how many of you are good at dreams, but what happens with dreams? See, dreams get conditioned out of us in a way by the following sort of writings on our walls. A child dreams and say, oh, I did so-and-so and so-and-so. And the parent will say, oh, you're a dreamer. Get real. Okay? How many of you have heard something like that? How many of you have said something like that? You didn't raise your hands, but you're there. I know you. So we have all these conditionings. I told a story on one of our other tape sets, which I'll mention here a little bit. When I was a young boy, I used to love to play baseball, and what I would do is, well, I get these little bitty hits, and by the time I got home and told my mother, they were home runs that towered over everything. I'm a second grader, okay? And they towered over everything, and they went on and on and on and on. They're still rolling. The ball is still rolling in some other county, And I go home and tell my mother, and obviously it was a dream. Okay? And my mother, instead of saying, oh, you're a dreamer, she said, oh, that's nice. Isn't that nice? Oh, what a gift, Whew. Tremendous gift. But anyway, when you have your dreams conditioned out of you, then your ability to dream becomes less, and we need to develop our ability to dream. It's an incredibly important thing. You see it in every self-help book you've ever read. But yet, how many of us are really great dreamers? Great dreamers. Now, I'd like to have you do, we have 2 great dreamers, okay? I'm going to go through a little exercise with you, okay? And we're scheduled for a break here in a minute, but I'm going to go a little bit beyond it because I want to do this little exercise. And I'd like to have you close your eyes for a moment and just listen to my voice. And you're going to have to put your own dream around the words that I say, because everybody's dream is a little different. And maybe I'll do this in the form of questions. If you were to earn that extra level of money that you would really like to earn? What would it be like? Would you have an office? Where would the office be? Where would you be fulfilling your dream? What would it look like? What kind of car would you drive? How would it feel to write a check for that car for cash and not even notice the difference? What kind of clientele would you have? What kind of people would you be dealing with? What would they be saying to you? How would you feel when they said it? What kind of power would you have at that point? Would you like the power? What would you do with the power? Just spend about 30 more seconds massaging all of that. Take your dream wherever you want it to go. Okay, open your eyes for a second if you would. I'd like to have you do one thing for me. I'm not going to carry on with this very much, but this is a very important exercise, and I would recommend everybody dream several times a day, as a matter of fact. By the way, when I'm in my car, where I live is an hour and a half from the nearest freeway, so every time I go any place, I have a long drive that's going to be any place substantial, and I daydream the whole time. You know, I go through stuff in my head, but a lot of times I'll just sit there and daydream what I want to have happen. I daydream. It's fun to do. But what I'd like to have you do with your dream is sometimes, somewhere along the way when you were dreaming, some resistances came up, some yes buts, if you will, some tail enders came up. Well, yeah, but you can't do that because, or whatever. Would you write those down? Because those are things for you to work on. Go ahead. Okay, it's now 10:52. So what is it? We'll be back here at 11:07.
And also, Gary, I want to say thank you for the $100.
I gave you $100?
You didn't know that.
I have an idea where it came from.
Somehow this $100 found its way to me as the support for our school. We're starting a charter school for kids, which is going to have EFT for the kids, family, and all of that. And I have no problem just taking this.
I know.
So,
but let me suggest something to you, if I may. See, I was running out, and somebody had some comment about the $100. Says, I'll take the $100. So I gave it to him. He said, no, they gave it right back to me.
Right.
Okay? Then I gave it to another fellow, and what he wanted to do was he wanted to tell me what he was going to do with it. I said, no. So I just left. So I left him with his $100 bill, which I gave him, which he gave nothing in return for.
Right.
So he had to do something with it.
Right.
And he gave it to you.
Yep.
Now, you have a use for it, and you had to come and tell me. Well, I just want to point that out.
Right. And my only question...
Otherwise, you've just accepted it, and you're a moocher for taking something without giving. So you had to at least tell.
Right.
Okay. Oh, I want to point out the power of that. Okay, go ahead.
I'm perfectly happy to take it. I just have one question. I just want to make sure that you want to give it to me.
So listen to that. Listen to that. Of course, my dear.
Okay.
I want a charitable receipt. Do I get one of those?
Definitely.
Okay.
We're a nonprofit. We take give receipts and take money for any good cause.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you, dear. I was looking at my list of things to go over, and I noticed. Well, I thought I was going to have my antenna thing was going to be part of another section. It's next, and I want to go over that. And after that, we're going to go into techniques and some persuasion things. If you look at your manuals, where it says D antenna, if you're on that page, a superb gift. Use it instead of your left brain. Now, let me tell you. There's something very important about that phrase. What we tend to do when we want to solve a problem, like how to make more money, okay, or how to make more money better, or whatever you want to do, what we tend to do is try to figure out what to do. In fact, that's a phrase we'll use. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. Is the way people will say it, okay? And what that means is you want to get into your left brain, which is your digital thing, which is where all your experiences are and everything else, and you want to go into all your experiences and all the things you know, all the writings on your walls, and you want to draw from that to figure out how to do this new level thing you want to do. And that's what we do. We do that repeatedly. There's another and far better way to do it, because see, the left brain thing is very limited. It's limited to what's already there, which is a mere fraction of what's possible. Okay? So fortunately, there's a little part of our brains called the reticular formation. It's about the size of a marble, size of the end of your fingertip, located, I don't know, somewhere in the bottom side of the brain, I understand, whose purpose it is to find out in your outer world those things which are important to you. And it filters everything else out. For example, right now, you are listening to me, so I am one of the inputs that's coming into your system. And it's fairly important to you, or you wouldn't be sitting in the seat. So you're paying attention to it. Okay? At the same time, you are not paying attention to your heartbeat. But now that I mentioned to it, you can tune into your heartbeat and know it, right? At the same time, while you're listening to my voice, you are not aware of the weight of your right foot inside your shoe. And you're not aware of the blinking of your eyes until I mention it to you, you see? So I read someplace there's something like 2 billion inputs of light, sounds, feelings, etc. per minute or second or something going on at all times. And if we tried to pay attention to all those things, we would go nuts. So we have this reticular formation, which gives us technically what's called the reticular activating system, which I call your antenna, which is designed to filter everything else out except that which is important to you. Okay? And we're going to take advantage of that, but I want to use an example or two to make sure that this is drummed home well. So, Martha, would you do me a favor? Would you stand up for a second? Okay. Now, Martha and I want you to hold this because you're going to speak into that for a second. Martha and I are at a cocktail party. This is a cocktail party, okay? And everybody's standing together and they're having drinks, like you and I, and we have a conversation going. And we're talking about whatever we want to talk about, EFT for example, or whatever. We have a mutual thing that's important to us, okay? And everybody else in the room is talking. We can hear this din going on, whatever, right?
Right.
You've been there before?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you know these two people right here? Ann and Sal?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay, you just met them here?
Yes.
Okay. They're having a conversation too.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Now, you and I are talking, and they're standing over there someplace. Do you know what they're talking about?
No.
You have no idea? Because your antenna, you and I are talking about what we're focusing on right here, okay?
Right, so I'm paying attention to you.
So you don't know what they're talking about or somebody else is talking about.
Right.
Now, Sal turns to Ann, okay, and says these words during their conversation. Martha Delafield.
Uh-huh. I knew that's what you were going to
Okay,
say.
do you hear it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And all of a sudden,
but
my
out of-
attention.
Out of thousands of words being spoken per minute in this room,
Right,
you pick out people you hardly even know.
right.
You pick out 2 words like that, right? That's
Yes.
because your antenna is out, because why your name and what somebody's saying about you is important.
Right.
So
yeah.
your antenna is out, okay? See, your name is important, and so your antenna now is picking up saying your name got said, okay? Right?
Right.
Very important. That's a very important thing to say, because there are lots of things, lots of ways to do more business, for example, that are already right in front of you, but you haven't seen them because your antenna is not out.
Huh.
You have read things in magazines and in books, et cetera, that have given you the way to do what you want to do, but your antenna hasn't been there and you haven't picked them out, okay? So if you will train your antenna will start picking things out just like they picked out your name, okay? Now, thank you, Martha. May I have a hand for Martha? Now, Loretta, you're a mother, are you not?
I am.
Would you stand up with your mother? Could we have a hand for our mother? And I would like to have you hold that, okay?
Want me to wear it or hold it?
No, just hold it. Just hold it. Just hold it. Now, how many children do you have?
I have 2.
You have 2 children. Okay. When you gave birth to your first child,
Oh, yes.
in a hospital, I presume?
Correct.
Okay. So you come home from the hospital, and I'm going to make this up a little bit.
Right.
Okay, because what I want is your response to something as a mother.
Right.
So you had the baby in the hospital, you come home, your energy's not as high as it could be because you've been through an experience.
Right.
Okay. So you come home, You take care of baby's needs.
Right.
Okay. Husband's at a point now where he's got to go to work.
Right.
Got to earn the money, etc. So you're home with the baby. You take care of baby's needs all day. Baby's demanding.
Baby's demanding.
Okay. Husband comes home at night.
Right.
You may or may not fix dinner for him, but let's just say you do.
Of course I did.
Okay. Of course you did. Okay. And so you're tired at the end. You put baby to sleep 2 doors down.
Indeed.
Okay, and then you go to your own bedroom with your husband, you curl up, and you are dead tired.
Right.
You fall asleep.
Right.
You're in the deepest possible sleep. I could take a lawnmower and run it through your living room, and you're not likely to wake up.
Absolutely.
Okay. However, 2 or 3 hours later, this little cry comes 2 doors down. Do you wake up?
I'm on my feet.
You're on your feet.
I'm on my feet.
But you're dead to the world.
Absolutely.
And while I exaggerate about the power mower, you may have heard the power mower, but
Maybe not.
maybe not, okay. But it would be very hard to wake you up. But the faintest sound, which is your baby, and your baby's health is important to you,
Absolutely.
will wake you up like that.
Right.
Okay. Your antenna is out.
Indeed.
By the way, does your husband hear it?
Well, that's up for grabs. I never knew if he was telling me the truth or not.
Okay. All right, well, let me ask you, are husbands likely to hear it? No. Why not? Say it again? Their antenna isn't up. And why? Because mother's is. And their own...
Well, that explains it. You see, because he would hear other sounds that, he would hear things that his antenna was
Of course.
programmed for. And I couldn't understand why he didn't hear the baby if he could hear the pin drop by the front door.
Or whatever.
If he heard an animal rustling by the front door, he could hear that, right?
Yeah, because that says to him danger or something, whatever
Right.
it says, okay? And
That's
so his
why I
antenna
always
is-
suspected him. But now I understand.
Now you understand. Well, you see, let me ask you this, because when I asked the question, would the husband hear it, and most people said no. If you were on vacation,
Yeah.
or if you wanted to leave for a couple of days to go see your mother or something,
Okay.
and you're going to leave baby with your husband, and the
Okay.
baby cries in the middle of the night. We may have the wrong circumstance here, but fake it for me, will you?
Okay. This guy had diaper phobia. That's why I'm
Diaper phobia, okay. Well, let me ask you, typically, if the mother is gone, will the father's antenna hear the baby?
Yeah.
Yes, because
Yeah.
now it's important.
He would attend to the child if it was on his.
He may not be a good diaper changer, but
Right.
But if the baby is making, he's going to hear it.
Right.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mother.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Now, I can give you example after example after example about how your antenna is working for you now. If a Bengal tiger walked in this room, you would instantly, because your own personal health is important to you, you'd be out of this room in a hurry, because your antenna would pick it up. However, if a little bitty cat walked in and nobody even saw it, most people wouldn't even see it, it just went under the table or something like that, your antenna wouldn't be out, you wouldn't see it. Okay? But the moment you're aware that there's danger around, because your antenna is always out for danger, your own personal safety, then you're up and running. Okay, the antenna is very, very important to you. It filters, just as important, is it filters out everything which is not important to you. Or better stated, it filters out everything which you have not made important to you. And the nice thing about the antenna is you can create something for your antenna, so your antenna will be consistently looking for these things. So that's why I talked about dreaming here earlier. When you dream, and you dream consistently, you are programming your antenna. You are saying to your antenna, this is important to me. It's not just a passing thought. This is important to me. And your antenna is going to start finding things you've never seen before. If you try to use your left brain and not use your antenna's a right brain kind of thing, by the way. It's like going into the supermarket and only going to aisle 8 and not going to aisles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 through 31, and not going to the produce section and the frozen foods and wherever else is in there. It's only going to that which is already here. But when you put the right brain to it, you then, the antenna to it, you then go to every single aisle in the supermarket is available to you, because you will start seeing things you've never seen before that are right in front of you. One of the stories that I put on the my write-up on the website, I'm going to tell you this one story, and then just to illustrate things for you, when I moved to Sea Ranch, where I moved, I had just finished the divorce, so I was starting all over again and all of that. And I started this little bitty business, just barely had enough money. I didn't even have enough money to make the ends meet at that point. But I put my antenna out that I was going to build up this investment partnership with investors, that had money, that were going to, it's a retirement pension kind of thing. And they were going to call me. That's because I was going to live in Sea Ranch, California, 2.5 hours from San Francisco. That's if I drove fast, okay, each way. So commuting was impractical. But I kept putting that dream there, that not only was I going to have this partnership filled up with all kinds of money with investors, but they were going to call me. That's interesting. They were going to call me. Now, how many of you have the thought that the world is going to call you with all these? How many of you think Jerry Coangelo is going to call you? Okay. Well, I see one hand back there, but not very many, okay? But I dreamed it that way. I didn't know how, important, I did not know how to do it. My left brain wasn't there. I had not, quote, figured it out. I wasn't leaning on my left brain. I had enough experience with my right brain to know the way to do it. This is a sentence here which you need to tattoo inside your eyelid so you never miss it. The way to do whatever you want to do already exists. You need only tune into it. Okay? So I knew the way to do what I wanted to do existed. I just didn't know how to tune into it, or I hadn't tuned into it yet. So I kept imagining it. And after a while, I went through one day I was going through my library of books, and I had a book there by an insurance salesman by the name of Ben Feldman, who I just loved the man's philosophy. And so I'd read it as a philosophical book. And here I had read this book probably 50 times before. It's one of those books I just read over and over and over again. And every time I read it, I came across this one little scene there, which my antenna had never, ever, ever picked up before. But now that I had it important to my antenna, I now picked it up. And what this man would do was he wanted to call on the corporate president of some big company in Ohio where he lived. And so he would go to the receptionist at the bottom floor where Mr. Johnson was at the top floor, and he'd hand the receptionist 5 $100 bills. And he would say, with a little note, it says, "Dear Mr. Johnson, I'll trade this, or I'll trade these, for 5 minutes." So he gives them to the receptionist. What's she going to do? Not give it to the boss? She goes upstairs to give it to the boss. And 9 times, I don't know if it was 9 times out of 10, but frequently, he got in to see the boss, Mr. Johnson. And he would be able to make his talk. Most of the time, they gave him the money back, by the way. I thought it was a clever idea. Okay? Now, I looked at that, and this has been in my face for 10 years. Did I ever use it? No. Why? Because my antenna was not out for it. So what I decided to do was there's books for these kind of things, and I got a list of people who were running pension plans in San Francisco in outlying areas, and I would get the name of the trustees for it, like Mr. Johnson, if you will. And so I made up a series of letters. Which, by the way, I sent certified mail. "Dear Mr. Johnson, I'll trade this," and I put a brand new $100 bill there for 20 minutes. And on the back of that, I put some letter about what I was about, and etc. And I would send those out. And about half of the people called me. Okay? They called me. Clever idea, gave me appointments, and what I would do is then I'd drive from Sea Ranch 2.5 hours to San Francisco, but I'd stay 2 days. And I'd have like 8 or 10 appointments per day, line these people up. Most of them gave me the money back. It probably cost me something like $50 per interview. Now, is that cheap or what? Saved me time, saved me I got right to the heart of it. But I would never, and I built a $20 million partnership, investment-wise, on that idea. Now, but the important thing is not, oh, gee, what a clever idea. The important thing is my antenna was out. That thing had been in front of me for 10 years, and the way to do what you want to do is already in front of you. You haven't seen it yet, because your antenna hasn't made it important. I hope that's clear. May I hear an amen? Amen. Okay. I could genuinely take a whole weekend seminar on the antenna. I'm serious about that. That's how important that is. Dreaming in the antenna. Okay, but we're going to shift now from the mental set to techniques, the how-tos. These are left-brainers, if you will. These are things to give you ideas that you can start using, developing, weighing, whatever, for yourself. And I've been a while since I've actually gone over this list, so I'm going to go through it one by one. And by the way, this is a time where people can start asking me questions. That's what the microphones are for, because I want to customize this to you. I just don't want to just dance down this list. Things occur to you, stand up and let's talk about them, okay? I think I've already, I'm going to give you a story. Number 8, I'll give you a little story. This was 2 or 3 years ago. A therapist, Richard was his first name, was telling me that business wasn't so good now that he had been doing some of the tapping, because he'd take care of things so fast, and so he didn't have this people that were coming for weeks and weeks and weeks. Okay, so he was concerned about that, and I was asking him, how he was getting business, and well, he had some ads out, etc. And I said, well, do the people that call you come and see you? And he says, well, some of them. I said, what about the ones that don't come to see you? Why don't they come to see you after they've called you or something? He says, well, they said they were just shopping, or they wanted to call some other people, or they gave a number of other excuses, reasons why they weren't going to come in. And I said, well, why didn't you offer to do it on a money-back guarantee basis? Why didn't you offer to give them the result, guarantee them the result? And if you didn't make it, you wouldn't make any money, but if you did, you did. Why didn't you do that? Why did you just let them go? He says, well, writing on the walls, that's not the way I do business. A great reason, right? That's not the way I do business. I said, Richard, when you let them go, you have no result for that. Zero. Somebody else gets the business. If you bring them in on this other basis, where you're going to guarantee the result, no money up front, etc., at least you're going to have a shot at the business, are you not? How many shots did you have before? Zero. Do you have empty slots, in your schedule? Yes. More than you would like? Yes. Why are they still empty? Well, okay. Why don't you let them come in on a results-only basis? That way you have a shot at the business, and you start getting some experience on how to do this on a results-only basis. You can only win on it. You can't lose. You can only win, so why wouldn't you do it? And you had a question back here.
Oh, I think she was first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that was my question. From reading your Thriving Practice and doing all the tapping, I really have a vivid picture of doing Fear of Flying with some of the big corporations around us. And my question is on the results-only basis. Do you think in something like that, it's to my advantage to do it on results-only versus per person, or?
I am of the view that once you learn how to do results-only, which is a different way of doing business, okay, that you are far better off financially doing that than doing it so much an hour. Okay? Now, this is part of the step number 3 in the business success thing. You've got to get the experience, stub your toe, etc. And you got to learn ways to do it. We can talk about some of the possibilities here as this thing unfolds.
Yeah, and that's what I'd love to hear. Is
but to answer your question for the moment, I think if you want to do business with one-on-one sessions and make that your primary business, that's up to you. I wouldn't do it that way if money was my motivation.
Yeah.
Okay? If I'm interested in making more money, I wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
Money doesn't have to be your motivation, by the way. But if you want to make more money, doing it that way is one of the least efficient ways to do it.
So are you attaching results only to individual sessions? I mean, results only could also be with group, or is it usually one-on-one?
It would be like this. I talked to a corporate president who has the fear of public speaking. I'm just making up an example. Yeah. Okay. Now, to get over the fear of public speaking to him is worth zillions of dollars, because his talks in front of other people, bring in business, and and one good talk can bring in $1 million or $5 million, something like that. And so he's had this fear for Lord knows how long. I can say to him, look, I can take care of that for you, $1,000. But you have to recognize that we may be done in 2 minutes, and you'll still owe me $1,000. We may take 4 sessions, but you'll still owe me $1,000. If I don't take care of it, then nothing. Now, it may be that once in a while you'll make no headway. But the odds are, if you get enough of those, you're going to make a lot of headway. You make $1,000 a person. Far more than you do for making $100 an hour or whatever your sessions are. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the idea of it.
Yeah.
Okay? Go ahead, Andy.
One of my tail enders to my dream is, like our bubbly friend, I'm sorry, what was her name?
Stacy.
Stacy. I have a Jerry Colangelo in my life as well, but one of my tail enders is that people don't buy different, they buy familiar. And I think that this is something that, with EFT, for example, it's a very different type of therapy. So I'm hoping that everybody in the room can sort of relate to this.
Yes, and we're going to spend a whole section of my presentation here on what's called building a bridge so that we're able to describe this to people better, if that's your question.
Well, not necessarily EFT, but my particular thing is, you know, I work in a different business than EFT. But so one of my fear issues, I guess, is that when I start communicating, and I consider myself to be a very good communicator. You talked about the fear of public speaking. I spent about 10 years in Toastmasters and ran 6 clubs in Albuquerque, and I have no problem with that. But I do have an issue sometimes sitting across the table with maybe a businessman who's more powerful than I am. And when I'm trying to describe to them, I really deeply believe that they're not going to buy different, that they're going to buy familiar. And I guess I don't really 100% understand what the concept behind getting past that would be, other than just simple tapping as we've been doing all morning, as well as, one last thing, as well as, I know that there's a lot of these guys out there that need what I have. I understand that, but I guess I don't quite make the connection between how I get them to come to me on a more of a spiritual level.
Well, have you used your antenna to do that? So you have to imagine, vividly dream this thing happening. Now, maybe it has resistances to that. Oh, this can't really happen for me. This is, this is too much of a dream, etc. You've got to dream it, and the way to find the antenna will start showing you ways to do it. It is very doable. But to get to your thing about the familiar, what was the word again? The familiar.
They don't buy different; they buy familiar.
Okay. There's some truth to that. There's some. It's people's comfort zones. We talked about that early. It's the writing on their walls. They have to have something in their belief system, to attach this thing to make sense out of it. Okay? And so you are right. People do tend, this is not an absolute statement, but they do tend to buy the familiar rather than the different.
Right.
They tend to do that. And so what we're going to need to do, and that's why I'm going to spend more time on this as this thing unfolds, is develop these bridges. And I'll just give you the essence of it now. What you would need to do is to start with where their belief system is. Start with something they have some familiarity with, to use your term, and say, this is like that, with this added to it. It's a very simple way to do it, but that way you've linked to something they already know.
Is that going through the brick wall or going around it, like you said this morning?
That's either going around it or making the brick wall nothing but cellophane.
Okay.
Okay? All right, Larry?
I just had a quick question on the contingency thing. I've done a number of those, and my infamous words were, as this works for you, send me a check. And the check wasn't in the mail. So I wonder how you do that.
Well, you may want to get your payment up front and give them a refund.
Okay.
And the other thing you're going to need to do with that, by the way, is see, there are some issues that don't really lend themselves to it. Because if their issue is, I was abused as a child, that's a great, big, global thing that may take you, like Lori said last night, 10 months sometimes with lots of sexual abuse to do it, slowly and et cetera, et cetera. So you don't charge by the result for that. You charge by the result for something that you have experience with that you know is likely to be over with in a session or two or less. The fear of public speaking, the fear of heights, for example, headaches, perhaps, some physical issues, and so on it goes. Things that are likely, or a specific memory. The time my father did so-and-so when I was age 8. Okay? In fact, what you can do is you could say to somebody who had the child abuse example, the global issue, you could say, well, what specific instance bothers you the most? Well, the time my father did the da-da-da, okay? Well, what's another one? The time my mother did so-and-so. Get 3 of them. Say, well, okay, I tell you what we can do is, for so much money, we can take care of those 3, so those 3 don't bother you anymore, and after that we can go from there. See, there's another way to do it. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And most people, maybe I shouldn't say most people. It is my experience, most people, I come from the business world. Business people love the idea that you're willing to put your money where your mouth is. They love that idea. And most people like that. Give me a money-back guarantee. Okay? And which is essentially what you're doing. Okay? That help?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
As long as you're a energy therapist, you can do that, but if you're licensed, one of the biggest complaints the board had is that I guaranteed my work, and if you weren't dramatically better after 24 hours, it was free. And somehow they needed to protect the public to let me know I couldn't do that.
Yeah, and I understand that, and thank you, because there is a legality, but it varies from state to state and board to board and everything else, so you need to check that out. Logically, however, they have a very hard, I would have, it's a hard argument to say you are not looking out for the public by giving them a money-back guarantee if you didn't do your job. It's a real strange...
It was hard to logically follow anything that they were doing based on protecting the public.
I truly understand that. I truly understand that. But then there's weirdos out there, Steve, you know, that, you know who I mean? Okay. I'm sorry, yes.
Just a comment, I've been doing EFT for 1.5 years, and from day one I've offered a money-back guarantee and haven't given a refund yet. And what I tell to people, I've had like 20 years of sales and marketing in Florida as a commercial real estate agent and a lot of other things. What I found is people want a guarantee because no one in the health practice does that. You can get your car fixed, and if it doesn't get fixed, you can take it back and yell at the guy and he'll work on it. In the health field, it doesn't work that way. So I tell people, commit to 3 sessions with me. At the end of the 3rd session, if you honestly don't believe that we move forward, I'll give you your money back, no questions. Or I will work with you until the issue is fixed. And I've had no complaints.
For X dollars.
For X amount of dollars, right.
Okay. One thing I would emphasize there, and thank you, because there's lots of success stories. By the way, you have a sales background. And many therapists and people in the room do not have a sales background. They still need to stub their toe. You've done some stubbing along the way. Right.
A lot of stubbing.
Yes. But let me go on a second, if I may. One of the critical things in this is because people will get their results and then they will forget they ever had the problem, and thus forget that you did this, and thus forget they got their money's worth, is you need to take notes. And so if you're going to do 3 sessions, the next session you have, you say, well, remember we talked about the last session, we dealt with this issue and that issue. Now, how intense do you get when you think about the time when your mother and father did whatever, okay? Well, it doesn't bother me anymore. Okay, I just wanted to point that out. It still doesn't bother you. Okay, it was like a 10 when you started. Yeah, okay. And you got to keep reminding them.
Right.
Very important. On the 2nd and the 3rd one, et cetera, by the time you get there to the 3rd time you've had all these issues, and you got this long list, it's very, very hard for them to say, I didn't get my money's worth. Although you're not getting the problem anyway, but I'm just pointing that out for other people.
Well, I also, if I feel like I use my intuition, and if I've got somebody that's that can be difficult, I'll ask permission to tape record the sessions.
Sure. Yeah, there's another good way. Yeah, you can do that. Of
And
course.
you can also have a contract.
Yes.
But people don't like contracts.
No, generally they don't. Especially with somebody in the healing field. They don't tend not to like contracts.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Davis. Go ahead.
I've done something similar in the corporate world with seated massage. Seated massage. Massage chair, and you work on it for 10 minutes.
Sure.
We tell them, if your employees aren't happier after the first month, if there's fewer absences or whatever, the parameters we set,
Sure.
then fine, we won't charge you. And not only has it worked wonderfully, but we bill them quarterly and they pay us ahead before we even do the work.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So it's not impossible.
Now, thank you, because, see, one of the things that we need to do in order to have a new belief, which I'm trying to give you, okay, about the possibilities here, is evidence. And you've got people in the room who've already been doing it. It isn't just me talking, it's other people who have done it. So we need that kind of thing as well. Quila is going to speak to us. Well, go ahead, Martha.
About the contracts, would that make more sense to do with the business people? Like the corporate president who...
Well, you probably need some kind of an agreement with people stating you're going to, so much money you're going to get so. In fact, I would have an agreement. Contract has a different thing to it. I would have an agreement. Let me call it an agreement. But you do need to put down in writing what you talked about so that they don't see... somebody's fear of public speaking could be every time I get up in front of a group, my throat constricts and my heart pounds out of my chest. I go blah, 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 okay? And so we take care of that. But to them, unless you have a contract that says your heart's not going to pound, you're not going to do all these things, once they get there, which may be in one session, they may say, but my problem was public speaking, I'm still not a good public speaker. Well, that's practice. It's a different issue. It's a much different issue. So you need to have some kind of an agreement if you're going to do this thing for so much money, so both parties understand what so much money means. And you can always go beyond that. Someone fix another thing or two to make them happy. That's fine. But then they have another agreement with you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Twyla.
First of all, I put my antenna out and I got my manual. Secondly, I have a symptom survey that everybody fills out when they first come that has a scale from 1 to 10, how bad their whatever is, and they mark it.
Sure.
And then they do that every visit, and you just see the numbers go down. So it's proof in front of their face that they have had effects.
Yes. And do you charge by the hour or by the result?
Right now, I'm charging by the hour. I've never charged for the result. And the question I had is, how do you come up with how much for fear of flying?
You know, that's a real trial and error thing. If I'm dealing only with the corporate marketplace, which have a much bigger pocketbook, and that fear of public speaking has a much bigger value to them financially than it might be to somebody else, I may charge more. That's a trial and error thing.
What is more? Since I'm not a corporate person, how much could I charge for an executive team to get rid of their fear of flying? I have no idea what that's worth to them. In other words, that's totally out of my...
Why don't you ask them?
Okay, that was something I thought of, was how much would this be worth to you?
Well, that might be, but that's kind of a leading question, and they don't like that question.
Okay.
Because what you're really saying is how much can I get in your pocketbook for?
Oh, okay.
Okay. And they're nice people, but they're not that nice. Okay. They're business people for a reason.
Yes.
But you can ask questions like, what have you done about this in the past? Oh, God, I've been to 3 therapists. Or I haven't done anything because it's impossible to take care of. Oh, okay. You could ask questions like, well, what was an occasion where you really had a problem with it? Well, when so-and-so and so-and-so, God, I got so embarrassed, and da-da-da-da-da, you know, and I blew a whole business deal, things like that. They're going to start telling you, maybe not in dollars and cents terms, but they're going to start giving you some idea of what it is. Somebody else may have already spent $4,000 with therapy and got no place. Okay? That gives you a clue, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Frankly, I think for somebody who needs to be a public speaker, $1,000 to take care of their fear of public speaking. Now, if they pay by the hour, you do it for $50, okay? But on a money-back guarantee basis, remember, most people don't believe you can take care of the problem.
Right.
Okay? And if you could, $1,000, and it was really gone, in fact, your real question is going to be, is it really going to be gone? How long is it going to last? Is it only per speech I get this, or do I get it forever? You know, these are questions you're going to end up with. So
Right.
I don't have an answer. I don't have a list for this is worth that, and this is worth something else. You're going to have to do your own trial and error thing on that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can envision charging a certain amount for corporate, this fear of flying thing, but only half that for the individual who comes to me.
Up to you.
But I'm afraid somebody would find out, you know, corporation-wise, and they'd be, you know, pissed off.
Well, yeah, they may.
Yeah.
They may. I hadn't even thought about that one. You could also do your practice where you would have some on an hourly basis, some on a group basis, some on a by the results basis, and so maybe you did somebody's fear of public speaking on a group basis. Maybe you did it for them on an hourly basis. That's what they chose. That's what they chose, or something. You see?
Yeah, that's good.
So,
Thanks.
okay. Yeah, Larry.
Gary, on the fear of flying, I researched that out, and there's about 6 sites on the web that have published fares, and then you can just adjust that to your area. I have a question I wonder if you're going to get to, and that is...
People we don't understand your conclusion there.
Oh, the question was specifically, what can you charge on fear of flying?
Yes.
And there are about 6 websites that have fear of flying with actual dollar prices. And then you can adjust that for your skill and your area.
Oh, I see. Okay. So these websites will say, we'll charge you so much for
Yes.
take care of the fear of flying, so you can get that as a guideline?
Yes.
Okay, and then adjust it depending on whether you think you're better or worse than that or whatever.
And I have a question that you may answer on later, and that is, what is the relationship between an single hourly fee and a group fee? So if your hourly fee is X, would you charge each participant in a group half X or quarter X? Or
Okay, well,
I don't know if you're going to get there or not.
I'm going to get there, and I'm going to start right now, just because you brought it up, and I'm not stuck on an A, B, C, D here, okay? To me, one of the more prolific ways that you can do tremendous amounts of good at low cost for your clientele and big rewards for yourselves to do this by group. Standard, conventional psychotherapy doesn't allow that. Because its whole design is we've got to sit here one-on-one for weeks and months and years and sessions and sessions and sessions and get into insights and so on and understand all of this and all the other things that go into that. And then maybe we get some good results and maybe we don't get some good results and so on, but it takes a very long time to do it, and it just does not fit for group work. Because everybody has individual issues and you've got to get into them, the individual insights. They have different sets of parents and different sets of schoolings and different all kinds of stuff. So it tends not to work efficiently for group work. However, with this, and you've seen me do this on tapes, or you've seen my tapes, I mean, I'll go around whole audiences. I have 80 people in an audience and we'll start working on some issues. Some physical issues, for example, or I do the tearless trauma technique, some phobic work, and so on. So I have lots of people at one time. And they're all tapping at the same time, but they're tapping for their individual issue. They're focusing in on their specific event, okay? The nightmare I have about so-and-so because of my accident, okay, of 12 years ago, where somebody else is dealing with something else. We can go around, and in 1 hour, I can collapse with these techniques more issues than the conventional psychotherapy could do in years. Correct? Yes. May I hear an amen? Amen. You've done it, you've seen it done, you know it can be done, etc. Now, can you do as deep a work with somebody in your audience in group as you could one-on-one? In some cases, no. In some cases, yes, okay? But in some cases, no. But can you do a lot of good work in groups with a lot of people at one time? Could you charge $50 for a 3-hour session, group session, once a week, and have 30 people there? Could you do that? Would it be a bargain to them? 3 hours of doing this? 3 hours picking out your issues and so on and so forth? And by the way, we could do something I did with Stacy up here. Bring one person up, do one-on-one with them, and have the rest of the people tap, because they have parallel issues to this typically. You can do a fantastic amount of work in a 3-hour group session, far more than you could do otherwise. And $50 is a suggested number. For 30 people in the room is $1,500, okay, for 3 hours. So you can now do that for 4 times a week. Could you not? And those who want to do more specialized work can tap you on the shoulder and say, yeah, I'd like to do one-on-one with you. Well, you have an hourly rate for that if you want to do that. Okay? Now, the question is going to be, how am I going to get all these people in the seats? That's trial and error, and that's some other things we're going to talk about. But the idea of group work with these techniques is hardly anybody does it. But I think everybody should be doing it. I don't think there's any question in my mind about that. Whatever writings on your walls that says, no, I've got to be one-on-one with my favorite clients and so on, that's fine, you can have that if you want to. But to ignore the other possibility, you are doing your public a disservice, because there are so many people who could get so much advantage out of sitting once a week for several weeks if you want to, in group sessions for what amounts to them nothing, affordable by almost anybody. You know, you're doing them a disservice by not providing it. Yes, ma'am.
Can I give an example of that I'm currently doing?
You may give an example.
I'm breaking out of the walls of $60 an hour session, and so I right now have a group with 8 women. We're doing 5 sessions, hour and a half per session, and right now I'm charging them $20 a session. We'll see what happens with that. But it's phenomenal stuff, because in a group that's smaller than this, but bigger than what I usually do, they're really supportive of each other. They tap surrogately for each other, and people's issues trigger off one another And so they go out of there extremely happy, feeling connected and bonded to each other, and paying $20 a session, and they think I'm a genius.
Yeah, and
it's
those
not-
are
it's
additional
not.
values you can get for group work you can't possibly get in one-on-one sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would urge everybody to put group, write group work down someplace on your notes, okay, and put underlines under it and all capital letters and everything else. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just wanted to expand on this group thing one more example, which is I witnessed something called holographic repatterning, where
Yes.
they used one person as the surrogate for the group
Yes.
and muscle tested for every stage along what the issue was, what the protocol would be, and so it was very specific to everybody.
Great, yeah. You want to say it again?
Through muscle testing, one individual became the surrogate model for the entire group's issue. So that particular evening, the group's issue was some problem with intimacy. And through muscle testing the surrogate individual, the very specific details of the issues were found out and a protocol was addressed for every aspect. And
okay.
so by the end of the evening, there was a prescription that everybody went home with after having cleared a number of things that they were able to practice. And so
Yes. Yeah.
everybody gained from it very directly.
Yes, yes. And there's a tremendous art. There's an art to the whole process, by the way. There's not just those who want to do this, the mechanics that will get certain good work done, but if you want to develop the art, which is why you're here, by the way, is to develop more artistic use. You can do a lot of art within groups. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
As you know, Lane and I do a lot of groups.
Yeah,
both
you do it by the
live
phone a lot.
And by telephone. That's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. The largest live group that we've done was 800 people, had them all tapping at one time. And 95% of them had a positive result, from a high number down to a 0 or a 1 or a 2. It was amazing. The group, 4 times as large as this, was wonderful.
Yeah.
But we also do a lot of telephone work, and there's a technology for working with a telephone that will allow you to have up to 30 people on a line, like a teleconferencing line, and we have that. So I just wanted to let you know, if any of you would like to do that for your own practice, to do groups by telephone, contact us by email, from our contact information in there, in your handout, and we rent our bridge for $20 an hour. So that's something